So proud of our football program, coaches and players, and the progress that we've made in a 3-year span. Our team worked tirelessly from our last overtime loss to this one. We clearly weren't satisfied with our loss to Virginia Tech, and we had a lot to play for and still have a lot to play for. Our players embraced a pretty fierce work ethic.
Mood lighting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Our players embraced a really fierce work ethic under the premise that is the best Christmas gift that I could give them is work with the best chance to have these memories. And I'm gratified and just thankful for Alameda, his leadership, for our team trusting that that would work, and then playing their hearts out today for all of us associated with the program. Bryce is coming back.
When did you find that out?
Right after our Virginia Tech game, I think it was the following Monday morning, Bryce and I met with Pat Hickman, who is our NFL liaison, and we submitted his paperwork to get as much feedback as possible, contacted other NFL personnel to advise him. That process takes about 10 days. We got the feedback back, and Bryce chose to stay. And he's not satisfied yet with where the team is, and he's not satisfied with where his own performance is, and he's trusting us to help him. And I'm very fortunate that he's coming back, and I think he's an exceptional player and an exceptional person. He viewed and made the decision very maturely, listened to all the feedback, and I'm really proud of him.
Defensively today, the way, what was it that worked so well?
Just tenacious planning. We've been working really hard. Coach Howell, Coach Papinga, Coach Hunter, Coach Soto, and my advice just at crossroads along the way when the decisions have to be made one way or the other. But they and the defensive players, they've been working really, really hard. They knew what challenge was ahead of them for this game. They watched South Carolina versus Clemson. They knew what was capable, and they knew we weren't going to win unless they played well. And they trained exactly like that, really hard. Almost to the point we weren't sure we could get into the game because of how hard we were pushing them. But they did, and they played exactly as they prepared.
Bronco, you've talked about how much joy you get from seeing your players after a win. What does it mean to you when you're greeting them and they're thanking you for what you've done for them?
I think it's the ultimate compliment and the ultimate reward. Just to have someone say thank you, or I appreciate you coming to UVA, or I love you, or I appreciate you. There's no price that you can put on that, and that alone is maybe the greatest motivator and the greatest gift I could ever receive from a player.
We'll work your front row, David.
A shutout speaks volumes, but you were also playing without a starting defensive end today. How would you assess the play of a depleted defensive line today?
We had 4 total defensive linemen for this game, 4 total. Aaron Famui was diagnosed with mono at a position where we just couldn't afford to lose another player, and we did. And so we played 2 down the majority of the game, and that gave us 2 deep. And we weren't intending to make any giant announcement about it or add any drama. It was just, that's what we had. And those players, they not only just did the bowl prep, they did the 8 practices for the younger players as well. And so our D-line we've been working hard. They practice harder, longer than any other position, and there was 4. We actually had 5, and now we have 4.
Bronco, I know you've said at points this season that you're getting there, you haven't arrived. How much closer are you to arriving after this win?
Yeah, significantly closer. When you play late in the year with high-stakes games, that requires a different level of maturity, performance, and execution. And after being close a number of times, we've taken that feedback and learned and grown and applied, And it worked for today in this setting with this team versus that team. And a bowl victory is significant, especially with that amount of time. That's a huge test. And our team handled it really well. And when you put it in contrast to a year ago, you can't be more striking in this setting, right? And so this one game setting, that's a giant step forward. And so we have to keep just finding the settings that we need to make progress in and checking those off as we go. And I think we're doing that.
Bronco, if I'm counting correctly, you have 8 starters back on defense and 7 back on offense. How do you feel about the experience you'll have? And more importantly, how do you feel about the expectations that come with that much experience coming back?
Yeah, maybe we won't be picked last.
Bronco, you mentioned Bryce getting the paperwork back from the NFL. What did it tell him?
So uniquely, it was wide-ranging and enough certainly to have made leaving realistic. And then we substantiated that with additional comments from player personnel, people that got specific as to things he could work on. So if he is staying, we have the template of what will really help him add value to his future as well as our team's future. And that's really as far as I'd like to go. I don't want to, he could speak maybe more to that if he would like to.
Right here. 2 parts. You heard O say your gifts are not orthodox. So for the seniors in general, how did they learn to appreciate those gifts? What was that process? And then specifically for O, how did he embrace kind of who you are?
Yeah, Alameda has been a really good example. He's become consistent, reliable, a dynamic leader, mature, and just trustworthy in every way. And yeah, the gifts aren't orthodox, usually until a player leaves the program, and then they have value or are appreciated. I don't say much. I like doing, and I like doing really, really hard things. And sometimes they're not viewed as having much to do with football, and that's not by accident either. I don't think you can become a great performer or have a great team until your will is stronger than your opponent or where it was before, and then you can work on the skill component. And most often what I hear after the games when I shake the opponent's hand is, man, your team is tough. And that's who they're becoming.
What's a non-football way that you've pushed O?
Yeah, well, I do interviews with my players. The interviews have no words. There's 3 players that come out at a time with me in the off-season. It's 30 minutes of the hardest things, maybe if you've seen a strongman contest or things that where you see someone maybe lifting a car or a beer keg or something like that. I'm making stuff up right now. But as hard as things as I can think of, I take them 3 at a time. I don't say a word other than they don't leave until they're complete. And it has nothing to do with catching balls or running routes. It's how hard will they work and will they finish. And that's my favorite time in the off season.
What's the breaking of the rock like at a bowl game? And was there anything for Bryce Perkins to break after his performance?
So Bryce didn't break the rock. The team voted for Alameda, and then Alameda was still out on the field, and so I broke it by default. I was the second choice, which just praying that I hit it. And in terms of Bryce, I'm just very fortunate that he chose UVA, and I'm very lucky that he's here. And we don't have an 8-win season without him, and the optimism and future and hope for our program isn't the same if he's not here.
Jerry. Speaking of Bryce, South Carolina's players said that they wanted to make him beat them with his arm. What did you see on the film that allowed you to do that?
Well, I think it goes a step further. We were able to run the ball effectively enough to stay ahead of the change to where 3rd down was manageable almost the entire game. And so the tempo throws, the rhythm throws, and the 1st down throws didn't have to be these monumental downfield shots. And so he hit those rhythmically enough, which was based on the run game. So the run game to me was the difference in the game, that we were able to be in 3rd and manageable. And then in long yardage situations, they had a hard time sacking him, getting him on the ground, and then he scrambled and and hit a receiver that was becoming open, and those are really hard on defenses. And so the combination of the run game, the tempo throws on third down, and then scrambling when we were behind the chains and them not being able to sack him or him throwing the ball on a scramble drill, I think that really sums up the game.
Coach, you talked about the depleted numbers on defense, but then you also have a ball control offense that had it for just about 3 quarters. Is that by design, knowing that you were missing guys and you wanted to keep your defense as fresh as possible?
It was by design, more so or secondarily because of our defensive line numbers, but more because of the tempo of their offense and the number of touches. So we didn't want to give them additional touches. We knew they were going fast, they wouldn't slow down, and if we could play well on third down, they just have to wait. And if we could keep playing well on third down, then they wouldn't be on the field. And so we played well on third down. We had a few critical turnovers or takeaways. And our offense then, the most masterful drive was the one that was almost 9 minutes, 8:50 something, and that was our hope, is that we could move the ball effectively, score, and use clock all at the same time. And we did that.
Okay, 2 more questions, one standing here.
Hey, Bronco. Pretty much everybody expected this to be a close game, and much of your preparation was about that. Did your players surprise you today with what they're capable of?
I don't think, one of the things we talk about is I want my players or my own kids to accept any labels that are put on them. I was just basing it off of what I'd seen. I think past performance is the best predictor of future performance, and the games we were playing against quality teams were coming down to the end. So we trained really hard for games coming down to the end, and I would rather do that and have it not be that than the other. So I'm glad that it wasn't a nail biter. I'm glad that it wasn't down to the very end. I'm gratified because of the progress we've made. But man, that training we put in will be helpful in the future.
Last question, second row.
Bronco, I think Alameda said you weren't here for a vacation. You've been in, I think, 13 of these bowl games now in your career. Can you sense when one team wants it more and one team does it? And could you sense that today, that you guys were the ones that really took a sincere focus to this game?
You can never tell where the opponent is, mindset-wise or physically, and nor does it do any good. There are indicators of your own team along the way, and one of the best indicators is when I announced that we'd be practicing on Christmas. Before then, we got on buses to come here, and we were going to get late enough where there really wasn't going to be much to do other than sleep. Yeah, that was a test, and they just looked right back at me with this nod, and then I explained the best gift I can give them is to work them harder than their opponent, and the memories will last longer, and they embraced that. And I have to say that none of that was just Bowls prep specific. After our game against Navy a year ago, this team claimed the idea that what's going to accelerate this program at the fastest rate is obviously playing well in our in-state rivalry game, and also winning bowl games. It wasn't just going, but winning. That started all the way back when they arrived back on grounds last year. So they hit one of the two, but maybe more importantly, they hit the last one. Which when they had their final one out there to hit, they pulled that off, which I think the learnings maybe from the previous games helped with that. And so it might be maybe even more gratifying to them that their last game is one that feels and looks like that. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.